Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibis, welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Happy Friday. Hope you guys are ready to have a nice weekend. It's going to be busy for me, but I'll be back fresh on Monday with some new episodes. Might try to find a trial to cover next week. Not sure yet if anything's starting on Monday. And I'm waiting on some more information from my contact in prison. If nothing's going on, we may do an episode of the jail to prison because you guys are eating that up. But sometimes there is a delay in her getting what I send her or me getting what she sends me just because everything's read or if something needs to be double checked, especially if there's a file attached. So as soon as I get some more information, I'll throw together another episode for you. Last night, I took my girls to see Wicked, the touring Broadway productions in town. It was great. It was just awesome watching my 12-year-old just take it all in. She knows the soundtrack, but hadn't seen that one. So we had a lot of fun. It was a good little break for me. Tonight at the 10 o'clock hour, I will be on Banfield with Brian Kohberger. We're going to be talking about the Rachel Morin case. This is the mother of 5 who went jogging and was found murdered inside of a tunnel on a very popular walking, running, biking trail near Washington, D.C. Super sad case, left 5 babies. And as of right now, they don't have any suspects that they are naming or even insinuating that they have a credible suspect. It's going to be an interesting one to watch as this unfolds. Music fact of the day, Bob Dylan wrote Blowing in the Wind in 10 minutes. And Sam Cooke was a huge fan of that song, and it encouraged him to write political songs such as A Change is Going to Come. Jumping into Lori Vallow, an extradition order for Lori was sent to Governor Katie Hobbs. Once signed, it could take a few months for her to be sent to Arizona to face charges for Charles's murder and the attempt on Brandon Boudreaux, which is her former nephew-in-law. In a press conference, Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell was asked about the first-degree premeditated murder charge. Originally, this was charged as conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Then when this was posted earlier in the week, it just had first-degree murder premeditated. She was asked if it was an online error. And she said all she knows is they have 2 charges for conspiracy. Lori can either agree to the extradition or she can oppose it. It usually takes about 3 to 4 months for extradition. Ms. Mitchell is hoping that Lori will be in Arizona by the end of the year. If Lori were to oppose the extradition, there would be a hearing held in Idaho about that. And she could be in Arizona for a while because Rachel Mitchell said it's going to take a long time. It's a complicated case. The defense attorneys will have to get up to speed, so it will take a while, but it is a top priority in their office. Remember, Lori is indigent. She'll have to get a public defender who is going to have to go through a ton of text messages and everything about this case. What was released in the Chandler files, I think, was over 1,000 pages. And a lot of that was redacted. They probably have more. So she's kind of terrified of Arizona prisons from what we've heard. And it sounds like she might be making a home there for quite a while. When asked why bother with Arizona and these charges, she said, I understand some people would look at that and say, well, she's already doing 3 life sentences in Idaho. But if you are the loved one of the victim here or you're the victim, you're entitled to justice as well. And we're going to make sure that is done in these cases. I agree 100%. I've seen some comments on my feeds about why even bother. She's got 3 life sentences, but Charles, her ex-husband that was murdered by her brother Alex, and Brandon Boudreaux, her ex-nephew-in-law, they both deserve justice in their cases. Brandon survived the attempt on his life, but she still needs to be held accountable for her actions in those 2. 100%. Give her 1,000 years in Idaho, but she still should go to Arizona and face those charges. Her defense attorney, John Thomas, was officially terminated as her co-counsel. Not anything major, no drama associated. He's simply no longer needed since the trial and sentencing have concluded. Maricopa County Sheriff Paul Penzone told KTAR News, her story gets a lot of coverage and it's horrific. But I could tell you, unfortunately, we've got a handful of folks that are in our custody right now and that their circumstances aren't a heck of a lot different. Obviously, due to the fact that this is extremely high profile, it's going to garner a lot of attention. It will create a little bit of a, I don't want to say unrest, but there will be an energy to it that's not always positive. So we'll be overly conscientious about the circumstances. In other news, they're going to have to watch her back for her. Moving on to Rex Heuermann. The attorney representing Rex Heuermann's kids spoke out yesterday saying that they are absolutely innocent bystanders that were caught up in a hellscape. They said they don't have access to their financial accounts due to the investigation. He said they have rights and remedies that need to be protected. Those include what the next steps are with the investigation, which we don't know what that's going to be. The allegations were a shock to the entire family unit. They're emotionally, physically, and mentally constantly having to reassess their position in life in real time. It has taken an incredible toll on them, and they're doing the best they can as a family unit. A lot of tears have been shed. Also, a judge said there is enough probable cause to have Rex submit to DNA testing. In the ruling, the judge said the court finds that contrary to the defendant's contention, there is probable cause to believe the defendant committed the crimes charged and therefore a basis to compel the buccal swab. Rex will give the buccal swab in the presence of his attorney. Also, I've been saying Asa. And that's the reason I say that. That was my great grandfather's name and almost what I named my son Mason, but it's Asa. That's how her attorney pronounces it. So I apologize for the incorrect pronunciation. But Asa's attorney wanted to thank people who have donated to her and also explained that the GoFundMe will 100% go to her and her children. This was so sad to hear in spite of everything that this poor woman's having to deal with. She's been suffering from breast cancer as well as skin cancer for the last few years. She is currently undergoing treatment for the next 12 to 18 months. And the big problem is the reason that he mentions this is because she was on Rex's insurance, which she will lose. And then how she pays for her treatments will become very difficult. As we know, nothing is cheap when it comes to medical procedures or treatments here in America. It's insane. You can go bankrupt from trying to stay alive. He also went to the house and inspected it. They had a cleanup crew come in to remove debris. He addressed the vault in the basement, saying it's not really a vault. It did have a safe door, but it's a normal size basement, and that's where the guns were stored. He said there was debris from floor to ceiling from law enforcement taking things from the attic and the closets. They had made a path about a foot wide to get from the front door to the kitchen. Asa and her kids were sleeping on foam mats on the floor. There is running water in the home. The problem is the pipes have been removed and cut, so the water would just go down to the basement. That is being repaired. He said there were 3 cats removed during the search warrant and they were taken to local animal shelters. The cats were going to be euthanized if they weren't picked up. So they arranged to have the cats picked up somewhere and they are going to find them new homes. He said he needs to get Asa mentally healthy for herself so she can take care of her children. Remember, one of her children, her adult son, is developmentally delayed. You take inventory of what this poor woman is dealing with. The fact that just first and foremost, that it looks like her husband was leading a double life as a serial killer. She's had a cancer battle for a few years now. And then she's got all this chaos with her home with the search warrant, which is understandable. It has to happen. You have an adult son who may not be able to comprehend or process all of this stuff. Even in a perfect world, somebody who doesn't have the struggles that he has, the comprehension would be unimaginable. And so I feel so bad for her and her children. He said it could be a couple of years before this case is litigated in the courts. That's not a surprise. This is going to be a very, very big case. She has not visited him in jail, and he made clear she is not a suspect and she was out of the jurisdiction when the murders occurred. He also addressed the life-size doll that was taken out of the house, photographed, and talked about extensively on social media. He said it is a collectible doll. Asa has collected those for years. She expresses her thanks to the public for their support for her and her children. The children's attorney was also there and spoke. They thanked the public for their support. He said that with all of this, the children obviously need representation as well. He said this case will be a long time in the making, and the law requires them to file certain legal documents at certain intervals. The children and their mom will find a notice of claim, which is a prerequisite to filing a lawsuit. This is to preserve their right. He would not elaborate further on who might be the subject of a lawsuit or anything like that. He has not met with investigators and they have not reached out to him. He said the grand jury is still impaneled in this case. Moving on to Alec Murdaugh. A judge has denied his request to rescind confessions he made about the death of their longtime housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield. Alec said for years that Gloria tripped over the family dogs at Moselle. He had said in the past Gloria also communicated this to him. But in May of this year, he said he made the story up and doesn't know how or why Gloria fell. Without the dog story, he wouldn't have been able to sue himself and get that insurance payout, which he kept from Gloria's two sons. He's being sued in federal court for $3.8 million with the insurance company Nautilus, saying the money should have gone to Gloria's sons. The Satterfield's attorneys, Eric Bland and Ronnie Richter, issued a statement about the ruling, saying we are beyond elated and pleased to announce that Judge Bentley Price denied Murdaugh, Jim Griffin, and Dick Harpootlian's motion to vacate the confession of judgment that he gave to the Satterfields today. This is a defeat for Team Murdaugh once again. They keep trying to victimize the Satterfields time and time again, and each time the door gets slammed shut on them. In other news, John Glatt, who is an author, said in April of last year, Alec planned a birthday party from behind bars for what would have been Paul's 23rd birthday. This was just 10 months after his murder and before Alec was charged with his murder. He was telling Buster who to invite and who not to invite. In an April 14th, 2022 jailhouse phone call, which was the actual day of Paul's birthday, he talked to Buster about the gathering, which was going to be held at the Charleston Harbor Bar. Buster told Alec that the party would be huge and word was spreading on social media. Alec also told Buster to put flowers on Maggie's grave for Mother's Day, making sure to tell Buster that he wanted his name on them, meaning Alec. Alec checked with Maggie's sister to make sure that Buster had put those flowers out. Moving on to Bryan Kohberger, his attorneys filed an affidavit of Leah Larkin in support of the defendant's third motion to compel. Essentially, she says using genealogy to build their case against Kohberger is not a perfect science, and these DNA sites aren't constructed the same way specialized labs are. Therefore, they're not as reliable. She is an expert in genetic genealogy, and we know that's how Bryan was linked to the knife sheath found under one of the victim's bodies. In the filing, it explains the different types of DNA, the Y chromosome DNA, which is what you get from your father. The mitochondrial DNA is what you get from your mother. And then you have autosomal DNA, which is all branches of a pedigree. Genetic genealogy primarily uses autosomal DNA. That's all branches. It says that companies like 23andMe, Ancestry.com, and Family Tree DNA give consumers a raw DNA file that they can download, but this genetic profile is not the same one used when DNA is added to the CODIS database, which is that national database where they can put in DNA to see if there's any unsolved crimes that might be linked to that DNA. They use STR markers to match with CODIS and not the same process as these ancestry sites do. The filing goes on to explain how family trees are created on consumer sites, which is how they match the DNA on the sheath to Bryan through his dad's DNA. I'm in the process of doing this because I just got my results back from 23andMe. It is a tedious process, and it's also crazy that I have 5,000 relatives out there, over 5,000 actually, who are linked to me through DNA. It's insane. Man, you just think we live in our own little world and our little world's all that's ever existed. But man, you go back and it's insane to see those family trees start to come to life once you start getting clues and start adding them. But that's how they piece this together, it seems. And once you get on a roll, it's very straightforward. The document says in granting access to the data and the methods used to construct that family tree that eventually led to Bryan Kohberger could allow the defense to be sure the DNA sample was handled from collection through testing properly, and if there were any loopholes and or violations of terms of service to the various genealogy databases. She also wants to review the process of the DNA profile creation and use of the profile. His attorneys have said the methods used could be flawed or unconstitutional. They really don't want this DNA coming in. Really quick update on Josh Duggar. A federal appeals court upheld his conviction for child sex abuse materials. We know last year he was sentenced to 12 years in prison. His attorneys wanted to suppress incriminating statements Josh made to authorities and also to overturn a lower court's decision to deny another person's previous sex offense conviction being brought in at trial. Moving on to Rachel Morin, a 37-year-old from Bel Air, Maryland, Mama 5, we talked about in the very beginning. She went on a run August 5th around 6 or 6:30 p.m. and was reported missing later that night at 11:23 p.m. by her boyfriend. He thought she went to a very popular jogging trail. It's called the Ma and Pa Trail. She frequently used that trail to exercise. It's usually populated with pedestrians and bikers, and she was seen on that trail by witnesses at some point. Violent crime, it's just not a normal occurrence for this area. Deputies found her car parked at one of the trailheads and it was locked. Her body was found around 1 p.m. on Sunday. A man named Michael Gabrzeski, he's a tracker who said that his stepdaughter found Rachel's body. Just a trigger warning here. He said that she was laying on her back and naked and had brutal head trauma. He said it looked like she was dragged and there was a 10 to 15 foot blood trail. He said her face was extremely disfigured. He told WMAR2 News, basically, when we walked up, we saw fresh blood and my daughter's boyfriend thought it was deer blood at first. The sheriff, however, is disputing this man's claim, saying he had no firsthand knowledge of the crime scene. At this time, we do not want to offer him any more notoriety. Additionally, continued discussion can hurt the investigation. To us, it is clear he has provided differing information to different news stations and our investigators. Based on our information, he would not have any firsthand knowledge of the crime scene. The sheriff didn't say if the stepdaughter actually found her body. But talking about the effect this kind of information has on the family, he says all of the false information that's going on out there, hearing about possible injuries to her and how this crime occurred, which aren't true, has got to make it harder on the family. So people need to think about that when they're out there spreading that kind of information. In a press conference earlier in the week, they did acknowledge her body had trauma. Her boyfriend posted a Facebook message proclaiming his innocence, saying, "I love Rachel. I would never do anything to her. Let the family and I grieve. Yes, I have a past, but I also have 15 months clean and have changed as a person. Please." Fox 45 spoke to the sheriff, who said, obviously, with him being the initial complainant and the boyfriend, they have spoken to him, but they're not in a position to say if he's a suspect or that there is even a person that's a suspect. The boyfriend has given his DNA and his cell phone to investigators. Someone who was on the trail that day said it was crowded and there were a lot of women walking alone. They've received over 200 tips, which have turned out to be fake. Colonel William Davis said they've gotten over 200 tips so far, but he said they've turned out to be fake. He said if people are putting false information out there or guesses out there, coming up with their own theories of what happened and people are running with that, that can distract our investigation. Because if people have leads, we're going to follow up on those leads. And we want our detectives focused on things that are actual facts and not things that are made up by other people. An anonymous resident said they had seen Rachel on the trail before in the past. She would usually listen to music while she was exercising. Police are asking anybody on the trail that day to turn over any videos or photos they took from August the 5th. They aren't ruling a random act of violence out, saying part of the investigation is going to be tracking back her steps from the last time she was seen to when she arrived at the trailhead. That's where her car was discovered. Her mother posted on Facebook to all the mothers with daughters, to the fathers, brothers and sisters, husbands, to our local community, and to world onlookers. If you have experienced the loss of a dear loved one, then you know how hard it can be to express the pain you feel in your heart. When it's sudden and tragic, your mind looks for ways to cope. As a mom, I appreciate the outpouring of love and support from family, friends, and the worldwide community that grieves with me for my young daughter. Thank you for caring truly. Because of the tremendous outpouring of prayer, love, and concern, our family is in the process of making arrangements for a celebration of life to which friends in the community will be invited. More details to come. And because Rachel was a runner, we are in the early stages of planning a 5K walk and run in her honor with the hope of having a trail of flowers. We are grieving. We need the time and space to grieve as a family. We have not forgotten our community. We just need time. I need time. It's only been 4 days since we received the horrific news. I ask that as mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters, that you would please have compassion on us and allow us this. To add to this tragedy, the family just suffered another unimaginable loss because a week before Rachel was murdered, her infant niece died suddenly from what is believed to be SIDS. They have 10 detectives on the case, and they are increasing their patrol on that trail, and said they have a heavy presence of deputies in the area on foot, bike, and ATV. They even secured $20,000 to fill an immediate need for a secondary ATV, so they're able to have one at each end of the trail in an effort to keep everybody safe. They said, we do not have a solid suspect. Not knowing whether this was targeted specific to Rachel, we are going to say yes, be aware, be thinking there could be somebody out here, and this is a random event. Police are urging a group of people who were seen on the trail at the same time to come forward, saying they may have witnessed something. Specifically, it's a group of people who had dogs with them. They were on the trail between 6 and 7:30 p.m. They are described as either being 3 men, 2 women, and 2 dogs, or 2 men, 3 women, and 2 dogs. So that's the latest on that case. I'm keeping a really close eye on it. If anything breaks that's small, I'll do a YouTube short. So if you're not subscribed, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification. That'll let you know anytime I upload something new to the channel. But on that note, I'm out of here. We'll see you guys on Monday. Hope you have a good one.